Prime Minister Narendra Modi is on a two-day bilateral visit to Myanmar. On this issue, I am joined by Mr. Vikram Misri, India's ambassador to Myanmar. Sir, what's on the agenda? This is Prime Minister Narendra Modi's first visit to Myanmar in terms of having a bilateral. Yes. Last time he came in 2014, but that was a summit.
Yes, it's his first bilateral visit, and it's coming at a time when there is a transition going on in this country, and in that sense it's a very timely visit. Myanmar is a very important neighbor of India. It's a large neighbor. We share 1600 kilometers plus long land boundary with it, maritime boundaries with it. It's a country with which we have ancient linkages of history, civilization, religion, language, people. We were together during the colonial times as well. I think more importantly, Myanmar figures very prominently in two major foreign policy priorities that have been outlined by Prime Minister Modi, and they are Act East and Neighbourhood First. It's a very important actor in our neighbourhood, and it's an important member of the ASEAN. So in that sense, I think the forthcoming visit will have a number of issues on the agenda, primarily the bilateral relationship. And our bilateral relationship with Myanmar has always had a very strong component of development partnership in it. There are a number of infrastructure development projects that we are doing here. Many of these were entered into, the agreements for these were entered into with the previous government, and many of them are now reaching fruition and being completed in the tenure of the present government. But during the visit, there will be an opportunity to review what has gone before, but also to discuss with the present government about their priorities, because they have identified what it is that they want to do as they want to grow their country and develop their economy. And we will have a dialogue on that and see how India can play a role in helping the new government fulfill its priorities. I assume that there will also be a lot of discussion on regional issues, but also on the issues related to our common security. And the Prime Minister will have an opportunity to not only visit Naypyidaw but also visit Bagan, where, as you know, the Archaeological Survey of India has done stellar work on restoring certain monuments over there.
Is this visit only about business, or both business and cultural?
I think it's everything, and that is how such visits are. And you need to try and cover as many bases as possible. So certainly the visit in Naypyidaw will focus on the business part of our relationship, which is the things that we are doing together. Security issues between the two governments, the bilateral partnership, the development partnership, our large assistance program.
So you said business, sir, but there has been a delay in the Kaladan project. Why has this delay taken place, and what is Indian administration doing to ensure that it meets the date line?
Well, Kaladan is a very large and a very complex project situated in a part of the country where implementing such projects is not the easiest thing to do. I don't know if you are aware of the magnitude of the project. I think the entire project is about $470 million, and that probably makes it India's largest development project of its kind anywhere in the world that we've done outside our borders. There are a lot of moving parts in this project, and that is why there have been delays in the past. But I would say that in the last 3 to 4 years, we've made very good progress on the project, and just within the last 6 months, we have reached some important milestones on this project. The Sitwe port, for example, has been built. It's completely done. The Palewa inland water terminal is completely done. We have handed over 6 barges, 300-ton barges, to the government of Myanmar for using on this waterway, the Kaladan waterway. And we have already awarded the contract for the final section of this project, which is the road that runs from Palewa to Zorinpui in Mizoram on the Indian border. And we are quite determined to make sure that the last phase of this project is completed within time.
So you spoke about the port. How does India see the China trying to force its way for buying majority stake in the strategic deep water port in Bay of Bengal? Are we worried about it?
No, this is it's something that is to be discussed between Myanmar and its other partners who it's engaged with in this discussion. It's not for me to get into that or to advise the government of Myanmar on how they should conduct those negotiations. We, of course, in India have a particular way of delivering infrastructure development projects on the ground. We believe that these kinds of projects must be done in accordance with the rule of law and good governance practices, that they must result in transfer of technology and skills to the local population, that they must be environmentally and socially responsible, that they must align with national priorities, and most importantly, that they must not create unsustainable financial burdens on the recipient countries. And those are the principles that we have outlined for ourselves, and those are the principles that we stand by.
Yeah.
And obviously, for it's up to Myanmar to decide how it wants to go forward in every individual project that it takes up.
Mr. Misri, what is India's position on the issue of Rohingyas? It has acquired a lot of domestic overtones.
Yes, it is. As you would be aware, there has been a recent upsurge in violence in northern Rakhine state. The issue is a complicated issue. It is connected up with the history of this country and with developments in the last 100-odd years. It is at the end of the day an issue that the government of Myanmar has to resolve. Outside parties, other countries, friends can advise, can make suggestions if asked for, and whenever there has been the opportunity to do that, it has been done. But at the end of the day, this is something that has to be resolved by the government of Myanmar. You would have seen the statements that have been issued by the government of India. We obviously, condemn any violence, extremist-inspired violence in this state, because we do not think that violence is going to solve anything. And we are hopeful that all stakeholders can come together in a process of dialogue and reach a solution that is based on justice, on equity, and on dignity. I should make mention in this context of the fact that we had a very good, very constructive report that I would say was recently delivered by the Kofi Annan Commission, the Advisory Commission on Rakhine, that it should be noted was set up by the government of Myanmar itself. And I think the government of Myanmar has issued a very constructive welcome to that report. I think that the report contains recommendations that can lead to bring about approaches that can resolve this situation or can contribute to resolving this situation. But this cannot be done, I think, in an atmosphere that is characterized by violence. That is difficult to envision. So I hope that all parties can understand that and eschew violence and come together in a spirit of cooperation to resolve this issue.
There are two facets to it, sir. One is the problem of illegal migration. You have settlements in Jammu. The matter has been raised in Parliament, Hyderabad, Delhi. And the second issue is that even the expat Indians don't call them Rohingyas. They call them Bengalis. So how do you resolve it? The word Rohingya used outside, but the regime does not acknowledge or recognizes them. And even the Indians don't call them Rohingyas. They call them Bengalis.
Well, I am not aware what they are called in what different people might be calling them. As you're aware, the terminology itself is a divisive issue in this thing, and I think we have to respect sensitivities in that regard of all concerned. The people, as they are known in India, the Rohingyas, insofar as their treatment is concerned, it will be in accordance with the law. And I think that is what the various authorities in India have stated. Here, as I said, the government has a particular view on this. The people have a particular view on this, but this is also something that is colored by the historical experience of this country. And therefore, given the sensitivity of the issue, I think everybody else needs to approach it with care and with sensitivity. And we hope, as I said earlier, that all the stakeholders concerned can come together in an atmosphere free of violence to sit together and try and resolve this issue.
So there are 20 million expat Indians here, the Indians who migrated 200 years back. A lot of them feel that, the process of giving them OIC cards or overseas Indian cards should be speeded up. And a lot of them feel that the Tamils who had voluntarily migrated, they don't get themselves into the national register and get in long run treated like second-rate citizens because they get denied the basic health benefits or the benefits which are given to civilians. What are we doing, what is Indian administration doing to resolve these issues for those who had migrated long time back and are now Myanmarese citizens?
Well, I think firstly the figure is not 20 million; it's about more in the region of 2 million. But the issue that you point to is valid. That there are problems with the documentation that they have. The Indian origin community in this country has a rich and proud history. They go back more than 6 or 7 generations in this country. They have been loyal citizens of this country and a law-abiding community that has been resident in this country for a very long time. Insofar as the issue of documentation to them is concerned, this is something on which the leaders of the community are engaged with the government on, and from time to time we have also engaged on this issue with the local government to the extent that it is appropriate. But insofar as the issue of OIC cards is concerned to them, as you know, currently as per government regulations, there are certain parameters that have to be followed before such documentation can be issued. The case of the community in Myanmar, as perhaps in a few other countries in the world, possibly doesn't fit the guidelines that we have right now. This is a process on which we are continuing to engage with the government, and I hope that a way will be found whereby we can try and respond to this demand of the community very soon.
And last question to you. This is a place where Bal Gangadhar Tilak spent 6 years in jail. Azad Hind Fauj headquarter. Once upon a time, Chettiars were the landowners. Indians were part of the colonial administration. In 1927, Indian National Congress was reticent to pull back the resolution that Burma then should not secede from the larger idea of India, but then it had to do that. But if you want to come to Yangon, 80% of the time you will have to fly to Singapore, Kuala Lumpur and other places and come here. If this is so central to our Act East, our neighborhood policy, so then where is the connectivity in terms of road that you can drive from Calcutta through Murray to Myanmar or take a direct flight to Naypyidaw or Yangon or any other part in terms of culture, tourism, politics or people-to-people place, sir?
No, I think you put your finger on a very important issue. Insofar as connectivity is concerned, there is no doubt that there is a deficit insofar as aerial connectivity is concerned between our two countries. And if you do the comparison, I think it will become clear that we have a lot of deficit to make up insofar as aerial connectivity is concerned. And I really think that we need to be a little bit more creative in trying to put that aerial connectivity in place, without which, let's face it, we will not be able to achieve our objectives that we have, whether it is in the field of building closer political relations or economic relations or business relations, etc. So, and I am convinced that there is work going on in this regard to try and...
I say this, imagine, in 1949 a film Patanga came, Shamshad Begum sang that song and Ramchandra was the male lead, and today when we talk about Myanmar, first it becomes Burma and then the whole song Mere Piya Gaye Rangoon Wahan Se Aaya Telephone. It's like, in one way it's a very romanticized version of Rangoon or the Yangon, Tumhari Yaad Satati Hai, but it also tells me that something remained or continues to remain fossilized. It hasn't moved that vibrantly.
Yes, I think that's a fair point, and I think because of as you mentioned yourself, all these linkages that are there, they date from a certain period. We were very close at the end of the 19th century and in the early part of the 20th century. We were very close together. But after independence, maybe about a decade after independence, for various reasons, our paths have diverged. And that has created a kind of a gap in our relationship, or a break in our relationship, which I think we have to work very hard to fulfill. Over the last 25 years, I would say, various governments in India have put in place the energy and the effort to rebuild the relationship. And I think we are in a new phase now, because there is a new government and a new system that is beginning to establish itself in Myanmar. And now is the time, really, for us to bring our best effort to this thing. I feel that the people of India and Myanmar need to rediscover each other once more, and rediscover the great heritage that they are inheritors of, and even the popular people-to-people linkages that you've spoken of. But this is something that will take time. What we need to do is to put in place the institutional mechanisms for this. So, aerial connectivity is just one part, but the land connectivity thing is the other one, on which work is already happening. There are a number of projects that we are doing on reconstructing roads along the India-Myanmar-Thailand trilateral highway. But more important is to also put in place the soft infrastructure, which is things like land border crossing agreements or motor vehicle agreements, etc. These are all also needed to be put in place. Once this happens, I think you will see more interchange and a rediscovery of old linkages between our two countries.
So thank you for speaking to WION. Kartikeya Sharma with camera person Manish Srivastav from Napita for WION.